texting back and forth and talking about his throws were on target. His speed was incredible, and he was in the pocket for as long as possible, going through his progressions. And then when they're not there, he takes off. He seems to have a good mix. Now, to answer your question, it doesn't bother me for this year. I think now, yes, I realize he played through the end of the season last year after Flacco and they kind of were experimenting, but this is the first full year. And anytime we look at the first full year of anybody like this, even to a guy like Colin Kaepernick with his first, 2 years with the 49ers, a guy like Patrick Mahomes, obviously with his year last year, I do think that you can get 1 year where even though they've played some of the teams like you just mentioned that they would likely have to go up against again down the road, I'm okay with that. Excuse me. I'm okay with that because this team is new enough with this setup that I think they still have enough firepower and newness to the whole thing that they're going to make it work. Now we get into next year or the year after. I think Lamar Jackson is going to regress, but that's a subject for a different podcast in season 4 of Talkback. Right now, here and now in season 3, I'm okay with where the Ravens are at. They have shown me a lot in the past couple weeks. And I got to tell you, that game with San Francisco, even though it was a 17-17 game for a long time there at the end, to me, that game was just as impressive that they come out with a win, because that tells me that this team can beat a Houston team 41-7, a Rams team 45-6, or they can even handle a hard-nosed, tough-scoring game and then come out on top with a field goal. It just seems to me, Justin, that they're winning the games that they should win, and then they're still winning the tough games. And as we just talked about with the Patriots, they won the games that they were supposed to win, but then you look at who they're losing to. Teams that are tougher, the Ravens, the Texans. We'll see what happens this week against the Chiefs. And then, they'll go on and probably win the last 3 against that other schedule. To me, Justin, that's the difference between those two teams that we're just discussing right now. As we look at it, the Patriots are on the downturn in this season. Now, again, we're just talking this season, where the Ravens, I think, go into every game right now, even on the repeat opponents, and they have a chance to come out on top just because they have that much momentum and fire right now behind Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think I said a couple weeks ago where I just feel like watching this Ravens team last year versus this year, they've just added some different elements into Lamar's game. They have a power game that's there. They have the read option. They have the regular option. He's staying in the pocket. He's not just scrambling. He's looking through progressions. So it looked like last year what the Chargers did in the playoffs was they just put a ton of speed on the field, and they really just cut off the run game of him, and they didn't have an answer in the pass game until late in the fourth when he got a couple touchdowns to draw him at least relatively close. But that was a game where people at halftime were like, oh, geez, should they go back to Flacco? Is it that bad? I mean, this is do or die now. It's the playoffs. So I do think these teams seeing him again, it will slow them down, but I don't think it's going to shut them down like it did last year. I think that's the difference on this team. Look, the NFL playoffs are kind of similar to the NBA. You're putting your entire scouting department. You have everything that's in the works. Some of these teams now are probably doing some advanced scouting, and you know a lot. So you have to come up with some different wrinkles. So have the Ravens showed us everything so far? I think some of those things are yet to be determined. Same with the defensive side. These teams are going to go back and look at the film and see what they got burn on, what their basically defensive packages look like. What are the adjustments that they can make? So there's going to be a lot of changes, I think, as these teams play each other multiple times, especially if you potentially would get a Belichick defense. You know he's great at game planning, so he's probably going to look at some of the things that they did, what they can change it up with. Same with teams like Buffalo, who have a pretty good defense, who the Ravens have to play this week. So the Ravens have hit a pretty tough spot here in the schedule, Eric, and I think a lot of people don't know what to make out of Buffalo. Buffalo was kind of the team similar in ways that people looked at Dallas, where, well, Buffalo just hasn't played really anybody. They've had a pretty easy schedule. And then they go in on Thanksgiving. I think they got a pretty impressive win, not just the fact they won the game, but by how the margin of victory. And now it's kind of like, well, they still have a game with the Patriots. If they could somehow find a way to beat this Ravens team and the Chiefs would knock off the Patriots, all of a sudden the Bills could be in the driver's seat really with a win to win that AFC East. So before we get to the NFC, do you buy into this Bills team at all as a chance to actually win the AFC East? Or do you think they're just going to be the 5 seed?
Whew, that's, as I saw your show notes, that was one of the questions that I struggled with the most in preparation, because as a Jets fan, I will say I don't study the Bills a whole lot. I study the Patriots more simply because they're the team that we're always going to talk about. And the Bills team has really, I would say, if there's one word that defines their season, it's overachieved. And great. That is fantastic for this franchise. It's been a long time that they've been in the basement. They've been struggling. I mean, pretty much right there with the Jets and Miami for who's going to finish, third and fourth in the division and who might get lucky enough to finish second while the Patriots win the division. We've known that that's been 15 years now. But right now, the Bills are in a position that I don't think you and I and a lot of other people thought they would be in the 13th week of the season. And to me, that's impressive. I look at them. They have a young, growing quarterback. I think they finally, it's been a long time, but they found their franchise quarterback. For the most part, I think they still have a lot of needs on that team, but they have a lot of good things going for them. And you're right. That Dallas game on Thanksgiving was by far the best game of the day, simply because, well, the Saints just killed Atlanta, and I just knew that game was going to suck. But here's the thing. And I kind of wanted to save this for this section because, again, I don't study the Bills. I don't know a whole lot about them. I would classify them as overachieving, but you pointed out the schedules for the Patriots, the Ravens, and then here what's coming up for the Bills. And I do think that the answer I'm going to give you to your question is that I don't think they're going to do it in terms of the Bills, tying, let's say, the Patriots at 13-3, having a chance to win that division. I think they're going to come up a little bit short. I don't think that should be considered a failure for the team. And I'm not suggesting that you do. I'm just, at large for our audience. I don't think that should be in any way considered a failure for this Buffalo team, as they've overachieved. But as I look through everything we've just talked about, I think the Patriots will pull it together and beat the Chiefs. That's a hot take, I know, because the Chiefs should be on paper a better squad, but they've got a whole host of problems. And I think the Patriots will pull it together and beat the Chiefs, and then they'll run the table the rest of the way. So I think the Patriots still finish 14-2. Do the Bills get to 14-2? Well, no, because they're 9-3. And so already my prediction on the Patriots means the Bills can't possibly win that division. But here's the thing. What's going to show me a lot about Buffalo is the next 2 weeks, Justin, because like you said, the Bills are the toughest game remaining for the Ravens. And then outside of the Chiefs, the Bills are the toughest remaining game for the Patriots. So I think the Bills as a squad, whether they win the AFC East or not, they have a lot to prove and they have a lot to play for, especially getting into the playoffs, because they could do damage. If they could find a way to finish out the season 12-4, my goodness, what a season, even 11-5. What a season for Buffalo. And what a chance to do some damage in wild card weekend. That's my position on Buffalo. I don't know if it's going to be the same as yours or not, but I think the next 2 weeks, not only for Buffalo, but what it means for the teams that they're playing against in, Baltimore and New England, as we sort of wrap this whole 3-team triad discussion up, to me, that says a lot about the AFC picture, because to me, the Ravens and the Patriots are like a 1A and 1B. I would actually put the Chiefs at 2. For me, I don't think they're strong right now. I mean, they're just not. And so Buffalo, they're scary for a lot of people.
I think the fact that we're in week 14 and we're talking about the Bills having a chance, a chance to compete for the AFC East, means they have blown away any expectation that anyone had for this team. And I think outside of San Francisco, they are by far and away the biggest surprise of this season. And Eric, they're a very quirky team. They very much remind me of like a poor man's Baltimore, that they are figuring out how to use Josh Allen. That's like, okay, maybe there's some accuracy issues here, but he's got a rocket arm. He can throw the deep ball. He's got insane athleticism that we're not afraid to run him. And they just don't have the dynamic offense that Baltimore does, but they do a lot of the similar things when you watch this team. They run the ball a lot. A lot is predicated off the power run game, and then they can go to the play action, or they can run Josh Allen, and they can really keep teams off balance, and they have a pretty good defense to back it up. So I think they just have hit a spot in their schedule where they're just picking and getting Baltimore at a really tough time when Baltimore's playing their best football of the season. Now, is Baltimore coming off a huge win? May they let down a little bit going to a place like Buffalo? That's not the easiest place to play. It's going to be cold. They had that big win against the Niners. They've been getting all the hype. They're 3 games clear in their own division. Might they come in and lay down a bit? I don't know. Maybe that Buffalo spot seems to be a place that can get people in that early game on Sundays. So maybe they do have a chance, but I think they would have to they either have to obviously win Sunday, or if they're going to lose to Baltimore, they need the Chiefs to help them out. And then yes. I do think, Eric, they can go into New England, and I think they have to have a lot of confidence that they at least have a chance. They hung with them in Buffalo earlier in the year. They had the big hit on Josh Allen that knocked him out of that game with the concussion, and they were in that game throughout. So
that's true.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion in my opinion, that the Patriots are going to run the table. There is enough holes on this team where I think they're going to massively struggle to beat KC on Sunday. I think that's going to be a tough game for them to win because they're going to have to score points because Gilmore can't cover everybody, as we saw on Sunday night. Yeah, he can slow Hopkins down, but then you have the guys like Fuller and Stills that are killing him. The Chiefs have Kelsey. Who's going to stop him? They have had to put their younger receivers in a lot more positions to play more snaps when Tyreek was out. Sammy Watkins is due for a big game because we haven't really talked about him, I think, since week 1. So he's going to have an explosion spot at some point because that's what Sammy Watkins does. So I do think that the Patriots, Eric, I don't see them running the table. But again, as I said earlier, the Patriots have made a lot of people look foolish, but boy, they just don't look very good right now. And a team, Eric, that we thought looked really good, and I think they still look really good. And all of a sudden now they're the 5 seed in the NFC, which seems pretty improbable considering we were talking about Dallas maybe not even having a winning record, being as the 4 seed just because of the pathetic, I guess is the best word I can say to avoid an explicit rating on this show, how bad that NFC East is. But Eric, all of a sudden the Niners at 10-2 after Seattle's big win on Monday Night Football versus the Vikings, they are now the 5th seed. But I got to ask you talked a little bit about it with Baltimore. How impressed with you were the Niners in actually losing that game? Did that tell you anything more about that Niners team to be able to come across west to east, play in a torrential rainstorm at the 1:00 time spot, and give Baltimore everything they wanted?
Yeah, it does. And I think this makes your point earlier extremely valid in that the media, a lot of the people that have, the blue check marks by their Twitter accounts and they have a lot of followers and audience listening to them, they take sample moments or one-off type of thing and they try to stretch it to mean so much more than it does. And I think what we try to do is look at it as a whole and just talk about it and talk about the season. And if I'm the Niners, I feel much the same way that you just described Buffalo, that if you told the Niners back in August in preseason that, hey, you're going to go into week 13 at 10-2, they'd be like, where do I sign? Where's the contract? Let me sign that right now. And so it doesn't make me panic. It doesn't make me feel any differently about the Niners. Yeah, Jimmy G maybe didn't have his best game, but I got to tell you, Jimmy G's looked really good this year. So losing to the Ravens, a good freaking football team right now, by 3 points on a field goal at the end of the game, that doesn't scare me a bit. If I'm any team in the NFC and I've got to play the Niners as a 5th seed, even though they have the 3rd best record, actually tied for the best record really in the NFC, but by conference standings and tiebreakers, they're in the 3rd position, I guess you could say. But regardless, the 10-2 Niners, nobody wants to see them on wild card weekend or the first round of the playoffs. That's a fact. So to me, Justin, any of the overreactions that have come or any of the people, to me, I was just as fine and impressed with them in a loss in a tough game, 17-17, as we talked about for a good portion of that second half. These two teams just battled it out and a kicker made a kick at the end. I mean, I don't think you could play another 3 quarters of this game and then who knows, maybe the Niners pull it out by 3 points. I'm fine with it, Justin. I think this is a scary team in the playoffs too. I think just like Buffalo, no one wants to see them in the first round.
I think when you look at the 49ers at 10-2, their 2 losses were the 2 most impressive losses of the season. Because when you looked at that game against Seattle and the fact that they lost Emmanuel Sanders in that game, they were without Kittle. They were getting beat up. Robbie Gould wasn't there. They brought in that rookie kicker. and that game goes to overtime, and they still had a chance to win that with